This is Support is Sexy, episode 554, with Lee Caraher, President and CEO of Double Forte. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And I'm excited about our conversation today. I had a great chat with Lee Caraher, and Lee is the CEO and president of a communications firm called Double Forte, and she's been in the business for over a decade. I want to say it's 16 years or so now. So she is a veteran in the business. But what I love about this conversation with Lee, and I don't think I've had this conversation with anyone before in 500 plus episodes, we kind of focused on, well, one, the importance of retaining employees in your company, but also the importance of what she calls a positive exit and making employees, when they leave your company, feel good about possibly coming back again and again. And she speaks in this episode about employees that she has that have come back through her doors 3 or 4 times, which says a lot about the company. Now, you might not have a business where you have full-time employees or even part-time employees, but even think about, this made me think about contractors and people that I've worked with again and again over the years. Even if I worked with them at someone else's companies, based on our relationship, we worked together again and again, or people who have worked with me as contractors, I've worked with them several times. It's all about the relationship, the environment you create, the values that you have, and how that resonates through your company. So Lee talks about that, also how she built a quote-unquote Millennial-Minded company and retaining millennials and creating a space where they feel valued in the company just as much as more mature or experienced employees feel. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I know you're going to get a lot out of it. So without further ado, Lee Caraher. So Lee, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Elayne, I'm so happy to be with you.
Excellent. So our first question for you, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure I ever did, but entrepreneurship came to me out of necessity, not out of desire. And now I cannot imagine not being an entrepreneur because of everything that's taught me. And I guess the one thing about being an entrepreneur that really that I do love is being able to say no.
Being able to say no to what kind of things are you able to say no to now?
I'm able to say no. If I don't want to work with someone, I don't have to work with somebody. If I don't think it's good for my business, we don't have to do it for the business. And after being in large companies where I didn't have that decision-making power, if we needed to make the revenue, we needed to make the revenue, regardless of if it was quality revenue or not. For me to have the freedom to say what is good revenue and what is bad revenue is it is actually something that the power to say no is something that gives me great not joy, but great responsibility and great comfort.
Mm-hmm. Now, why did you say that you started your business out of necessity? What was that moment like?
So, actually, we're recording this on 9/11, and 9/11 is a big day in my life. I was so fortunate not to know anybody who died that day.
Yeah, actually, I know someone who died that day. Yeah,
and I don't know that anyone doesn't know somebody who knows somebody, right? Mm-hmm. For sure. However, it was a really big day in my life, and not because of what it did and the import of what it did for the country and the world, but really about how I reacted, how I responded to it, and then how the people around me who were in areas of influence in my career responded to it too. And in general, and basically, based on how the company I worked for responded to it, made me say, you know what, this is not how I'm going to live my life. I could have been on that plane. I travel back and forth to New York all the time. I'd actually been on a plane from New York 1 week earlier and said, you know what, I'm going to go do something else. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to do it there. And how I responded to 9/11 was to really take control of my life and say things like, I need to not work with people I don't respect. Mm-hmm. I need not to be on a plane at someone else's beck and call all the time. And I need to be in a place where I am in total alignment with between my values and my work and my family, which I had not been in before 9/11.
What was the response or non-response maybe from the company you were working for at the time? That sounds like it was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. Well, it was the company I was working for before was very generous to me. They had gone through a large annealment, big publicly traded companies. They had done everything they could to keep me in the company. They really wanted me to move to New York. I didn't want to do that. And I'm in public relations communications business. And my reaction was, when this happened, was I closed all my offices. I told everybody to go home or stay home, depending where they were in the world. And no work was going to happen, because our work is about promoting people, products, and companies. And I said, unless you're on the United account, you do not have to work today. Mm-hmm. Everybody go home. And a partner of mine the person was going to report to me in the future, called me when I didn't show up to a meeting that I had emailed, said, let's cancel this meeting, and said, why aren't you here? And I said, well, because we're all home. And I realized, oh my gosh, are you at work? And are your people at work? And all these people were going to work for me eventually. Mm-hmm. And she said, absolutely. We're all on the phone. We're doing our work. That's what we need to do. And I was flabbergasted. I said, you mean you have people on the phone pitching products to reporters? Yes, we do. And I said, get them off the phone. Get them off the phone right now. She was not happy with that direction. She moved it up her chain, because the two companies were still separate. She moved it up her chain. I didn't bother moving it up my chain. And
you knew it was the right thing to do.
I already had approval for what I was doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically the head of the top of the chain, the CEO of the company, ended up calling me, and I was going to end up reporting to him. And he said, call everybody back in. And I said, no. And I said, I cannot believe you guys are working. And I said, this is not the right response. So that is really what, and I said, oh my gosh, Elayne, this is how I actually, in retrospect, this is how I really should have known I shouldn't work for anybody else. Mm-hmm. I said, not only are we not here today, we're not going to be here tomorrow. And I'll talk to you Thursday. And then I went home. Ultimately, I went home. And I said to my husband, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. This was 2001. In San Francisco, the business had been cratering, .coms were cratering. I was the last person standing literally at my level in this very large company, and was going to be the only one who went into the merged company. And I was like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I gave my notice on September 13th, because I did have everybody stay home on September.
On the 12th. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
So that's what got me out of the company. Didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I wasn't going to live that way. And I thought I was going to take a year off. I had a young infant who we had just figured out had special needs. I had a toddler who was starting preschool, and I'd never really taken time except for maternity leave before. It's like, you know what? I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to do this. We're going to figure out what's going on with my kid, my youngest child, and I'm going to figure out what's next. And that was the plan. And then I drove my husband crazy, and literally with the glue guns and the sock program and a Christine house. And he basically came to me a few months later, said, we're not going to make it if you're going to be like this.
You got to do something, right? You got to get out of here.
You got to get out of here. And he was right. I mean, I really was I had 4 glue guns. He goes, why do you need 4 glue guns? I mean,
why do you need for what?
I had 2 hands and 2 feet. Clearly, I needed 4 glue. I mean, I was insane. Seriously insane. I mean, I was crafting for Christmas gifts. I am not artistic. I mean, I love getting things that are homemade by other people, but people were just taking my Christmas balls going, oh, thanks.
Right.
This is bad. It was bad.
That's hilarious.
And so I did go back. So then I thought, oh, I will go find another job like the one I'd had previous to the agency. So I'd been in-house at a company. I loved that job. And I was way down the line after about a month, way down the line between two companies to get, fantastic positions when my mother, I lived in California, they lived in Wisconsin, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And she was given 4 months to live. She ended up living almost 4 years, which is a huge gift. But she was given 4 months to live, and it was very clear that moment when she made the phone call. I said, okay, I'm going to pull myself out of these 2 jobs because I could not go to Wisconsin and be with my mother at the end of her life and take either of those 2 jobs. So then, very long answer, Elayne, I apologize.
No, that's okay. I love a good story.
Breadwinner. I'm a breadwinner in my family. My husband I'm the chief bacon officer. He's the chief home officer. He worked part-time, not even half-time, for most of our children's lives. My oldest kid is 20 now. And I'm the breadwinner. I was like, well, I'm going to have to start my own company if I want to have an income. And that's how I started my company almost 16 years ago, out of necessity. And I'm not sure I had the idea that it would make it 16 years, but here we are. There you go.
There we are. So you were in now the other agencies and places that you worked, were they still in a similar field, communications, public relations, and that kind of thing? Mm-hmm. Okay. Absolutely. So you had that experience. Obviously you said, okay, I'm going to do what I know at this point and start an agency. So what would you say was first of all, are you from originally Wisconsin or from California?
No, I grew up in Boston, outside of Boston, and then Providence. I went to high school in Providence, Rhode Island.
And how did you end up East Coast? How did you end up in California?
Okay. Another great story. Okay, so I was living in Providence. My father's career was starting or fixing cardiac surgery units. He moved to Ohio. They moved to Ohio. I was in an awesome school called the Lincoln School, which is the last standing Quaker girls' day school in the country. And I was doing had amazing programs that I was very heavily involved in. And it was after my 10th grade. And so I could have stayed, I could have gone, but I was in such great programs that we decided that I would stay in Providence and I lived with my cousins, and my parents moved to Ohio. Got to Ohio, and I was like, wow, who knew there was something here? Because in New England, no one knows if there's something outside of New England, or at the time they didn't. And I decided only to apply to colleges in the Midwest. I ended up going to Carleton College and I got a degree in medieval history. Very useful. After school, my parents, meanwhile, had moved to California, to San Francisco. After school, I wanted to get into PR, and I decided to do in Boston, go home to Boston where there were lots of opportunities. And I did that for several years. And then when I was 27, I think, I was in Boston. I was working my buttock off, as it were, and never seeing the sun. So I went to the doctor, and that was early on in understanding how the sun impacts our psyche. And she said, well, you have sun sensitivity disorder, Lee. What you should do, because you're not getting any sun, because I was going to work at 6 a.m. and coming out of work at 8 p.m., is you should go to a tanning booth every day. And I was like, I'm Irish descent. I don't think that's a good idea. I'll be a French fry shortly.
I've never heard that as the prescription.
I know, that was the prescription. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe I should just go where the sun is. So I decided to go where the sun is. And first I went to LA, and I lived at the beach. I loved it, but didn't feel like home. And then I moved to San Francisco Bay Area to work when I was offered a job at my client called Sega of America, the video game company. And it was an incredible opportunity to work for Sega when Sega was the #1 video game company in the country, and moved up then. And I've been here ever since.
Been there ever since. And that is where you started your communications agency 16 years ago, Double Forte. Is it pronounced Forte?
Yeah, it is.
Double Forte.
In San Francisco. Mm-hmm.
In San Francisco. And you've been there for 16 years.
Here, and now we have an office in New York too. So I split my time between New York City and San Francisco.
Now, what would you say differentiates Double Forte from other firms that are out there, other than obviously having its longstanding reputation?
Yeah.
16 years is plenty of time.
It's a long time. It's a good time to do it. I think a few things. One, we have very high tenure for our clients and for our employees, and that makes a huge difference. We do what's right for the client, even if it hurts us. And when we put our clients first in our decision making, we do what's right for them, not just what is a cash generator for us. It's what builds trust over time with clients, and then we get the results that actually drive their business. We are very senior heavy, so that our clients are always working with people who know what the hell they're doing, while we also train younger staff at the same time. And we do what we're good at. We don't try to do things we're not great at. And we start with an idea of, how can I help you? How can I help you? And it's not about us, it's about them. So I think those things together combine to make a compelling offering for companies who value those things. Some companies don't value, doing what's, some of the very hard work, the grinding work that is required to make things happen, because we're not very glitz and glamoury that way. And often we win a client the second time they come and talk to us, because the first time they're like, oh, I thought there'd be a nice big party involved. And we're like, no, don't spend your money that way. And then go with somebody else. They spend all the money. They don't get the results. And they come back and they say, oh, we should have done it your way. And we've learned not to say, I told you so. So that's, and it's all about that, right? When I started the company, I made a list of the people I wanted to work with. Again, no matter what, it was a very short list, 11 people from my career. And today, 16 years later, we can track back 80% of our clients to those 11 people in some way, shape, or form.
Wow, whether it's through referral or actually working with those same companies.
Exactly.
Excellent. Now, how did you choose I love that idea for everyone listening who's thinking about a service business. We talk about shaping or writing about or creating your ideal client and what that looks like. But the fact that you had 11 either people, organizations, et cetera, in mind that you wanted to work with, how did those 11 make your list?
So those 11 people made my list. I didn't worry about companies. I worried about the people. Because this is in the end, it's who do you trust to do the work that we do for you, right? So we're an agency, we're a service business, and our job is to make our clients' world easier, right? And to take things off their shoulders. And who do you trust to do that? That's a personal thing, right? And you don't want to create work for your clients. So I made a list of people who I trusted to hire me, meaning they would be respectful, they would listen, they knew what I could do and what I could bring to the table by hiring other people. They would tell me the truth. And I knew that if it was interesting or not, that it would be, not fun. It might not be fun, but it would be good. And that's how I made the list. People who I could trust to work with again and who wouldn't leave me out hanging to dry. A lot of agencies go under because they don't put in place. They do work when they shouldn't, and they do work they shouldn't do, and they don't get paid for the work, and they get hung out to dry. So besides putting in the contracts that would allow me not to have that happen, working with the people who wouldn't leave you out to dry is super important.
What would you say, or how would you say that the company takes I read this on your website, a holistic approach to communications? What does that mean?
So often, someone says, I need some PR, or I need social media, or I need, sales channel stuff. But really, it's the whole, what is the story of the company? What's the story of the person? What's the story of the product? And if it all doesn't tie together in today's, it's always been true, but in today's world, it's really true. If your Instagram doesn't match what you're saying on your website, doesn't match what you say to the media, doesn't match what you say in customer service, you're not going to have a business very long anymore, right? Because consumers care about these. They've always cared about these things, but now they can actually track them. And the more you can be authentic to who are you, and then doing one thing through all of the channels that matter, A, the more efficient your work is, and B, the more sustainable your work is. And so that's what we do from a holistic point of view, what is the purpose of the company? Who are the people who work for you? Who are the partners that the company works with? Suppliers, distributors, partners, creators. Who is the customer and who is the distributor? And do all the people who touch all those things have to be invested or are invested in whatever you're selling or whatever you're providing. And if you don't have the same message from the top, the CEO to the employees and the employees to the partners, and the employees to the customers and the distributors to the customers, it will fall apart. And a lot of work, we could do a lot of work. We've left many millions of dollars on the table for crisis work that didn't have to occur just because someone was thinking about a short term versus a long term and not thinking holistically about, they were thinking about their own individual KPIs, not the company's KPIs. And that's how we think about these things.
Yes, and that's evidently much more than just public relations or just marketing or just, it's very deep into it. Like you said, you're looking at the partners and just, again, a holistic approach to all parts of the business, not even all parts of marketing, which is what I honestly was thinking at first.
Yeah, communications is a you can be really busy, do lots of PR, lots of stuff, lots of media relations, lots of stunts with influencers or do something on Twitter or do events and get nowhere and actually achieve nothing, none of your goals for your business, except that you're very busy and it looks very fantastic. Right. If you don't have communications that actually ties to the business goal, you're probably not going to have that business very long. And I think that's where, communications people, PR people, the best people I know in PR are the smartest people I know, frankly. They think about business, they understand how story motivates, and they understand how transparency matters. And they don't bother trying to hide things anymore, for sure. And then some of the, you could do lots of stuff that doesn't move the needle at all. And our point of view is don't bother doing that. And really, I came to that point of view actually having been in-house, having been at Sega when I had never been in-house before. And, I had $11 million PR budget, and I had no idea who was doing that work because I was busy doing other things. And one day, the CEO, Mr. Iramajiri, just said, "Lee, I want you to take over customer service." I'm like, "It communicates." I'm like, "Okay, how hard could that be?" Oh my God. Oh my gosh, changed my point of view on everything. And this was Sonic. This is when Sega was not doing very well. Nintendo and Sony were eating our lunch, frankly, in between the Sega Saturn and the Dreamcast. And I took over customer service, and we had literally just bonused our agency and my staff for a great program. They killed it. This program killed it on a really pretty mediocre game, but they had overachieved. And so I took money that we had and I gave it to the agency as a bonus. I gave it to my people as a bonus. And then I was given customer service. And then 2 weeks later, that game cost my P&L something like $100,000 in phone calls. I'm like, holy crap, what just happened?
Phone calls about people complaining about it?
Complaining about the game or returns. And so now I was responsible for both sides, both the promotion and for the customer satisfaction. And I stopped everything. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys. I was being measured just on the promotion part. And overnight, I went from being measured just on the promotion. Did we hit our promotion goals to actually being measured on the performance of the game after it got into market? So I said, everybody stop. And we looked at everything. And in that time, I made everybody listen to phone calls and customer service so they could hear just how much it was just, this is a crappy game. I can't believe I read this review and I thought it would be great and it wasn't. So the things we'd been obviously good at didn't help our bottom line. And in that week that I had everybody in PR listen to the phone calls, which they hated me for, we had 11 phone calls from around the country asking what Sonic's middle name was. Sonic the Hedgehog is the mascot for Sega. They're asking, what is Sonic's middle name? And we tried to figure out, where did these questions come from? They were all from all over the country, different ages, mostly boys or men. literally all over the country. And we're like, I don't know. It's Sonic the Hedgehog's middle name is the. And we decided, I was like, there's the consumer is telling us what they care about. They care about Sonic. So forget all these games that who knows if they're good or not. What we're going to do is we're going to do a program around Sonic. And that communications program ended up being the highest performing communications program I've ever done. Before social media started.
So what did you do with Sonic? What was not to get too into the weeds, but what did you
did a whole program. We did a blueprint of who is Sonic, what's Sonic, his middle name, all the things that he had been involved with all around the world. And we just did a profile program for Sonic. And media loved it, television loved it, consumers loved it. And it just kept getting higher and higher and higher impressions, which at that time is what we measured. We don't measure that as much anymore, but at that time, that's what we measured.
Oh my goodness. So, now, what is his middle name, Lee? Okay. I had to solve that. We couldn't leave that hanging out there. I need to know that before the end of the
Anyway, so that really informed, and from then on, everything was informed about the total experience of the consumer,
right?
Not just the goal of selling. And exposure, because total reputation is what communications is responsible for today. It wasn't what I was responsible for then, but it is what we're responsible for today. And if you don't think about it holistically, you don't think about all the people who touch your company, touch your products, touch your brand, you have some chinks in your armor and they will fall apart.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things you mentioned earlier is that your company it's senior heavy, I think is the word that you used earlier. But I noticed that you have a podcast called Millennial-Minded that you're on as a guest. So you're in the best of both worlds, right? So what made you decide to do a podcast that spoke to millennials I know you have co-hosts too, right?
Right. So that Millennial-Minded is a podcast we do. It's a career advice podcast that we do weekly. And it's two gentlemen in the company, David and Duncan, who are funny as hysterical. They're just, I have no creative control over these two, just so you know. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what they're doing with me after it. And then Duncan interviews me about one topic usually it's from a listener or we put it on the website. So sometimes it's a reader too who has a question for their career and what would I do? What do I think about it? And Millennial-Minded comes out of my understanding about millennials, having failed dramatically with them in 2011. When I started my company in 2002, we only hired people with 10 years of experience. That basically meant they were at least 32 years old, which basically meant they were Gen Xers. Mm-hmm. After 2009, when we were reevaluating our business model, coming out of the cratering of the economy, I realized that there were going to be very few people with 10 years of experience in San Francisco because no one got hired in the public relations industry from 2009, end of 99 to 2004. So there's going to be a big donut hole of experience. And, after something like that, the economic crisis, you should always look at your business model because what took you into that is probably not what's going to take you out of that. And I decided to hire entry-level people again, which in my career, which I thought nothing of. Elayne, I was like, oh, of course, we'll just do A, it'll be cheaper, and B, we'll grow our own workforce. Fabulous. Mm-hmm. And I thought nothing of it. At Sega, my previous company had over 700 people, and 80% of them were under 30. At Sega, I had over 650 people. 70% of them were under 30. I thought nothing of this. And I failed miserably. I had 100% failure rate with retaining millennials.
Oh, retaining. Okay.
And recruiting was easy. We were great recruiters, but retaining them, we had in 1 2.5 month period, I lost every millennial that we had hired. Mm-hmm. So I was like, one person could have been their problem, but all of them that had to be us. Mm-hmm. So then I started researching it, and I didn't know what a millennial was then. I was looking for entry-level staff, right? And then everything I found was so negative. Millennials suck. Millennials are entitled. Millennials are lazy. All these things, and I was like, they can't all be negative. It's 80 million people. Oh my gosh! So I decided to ignore everything everything negative about millennials and sought out to figure it out myself for my company. And then at the same time, my clients are having the same problem with retaining their millennials. And it ended up this communication of like, why do you exist and why should you be compelled to work here and all those kinds of things. It is the communication. I ended up being about a third of my business ended up being just working with my clients on how they could retain their millennials. And then I wrote my first book. It was actually Millennials in Management. So it comes out of all of that work, trying to figure it out, cracking a code on treating people with respect more than anything else. And then for millennials, no one's really giving them, my experience is that CEOs don't give younger people great job experience and job advice. And so it was a way for me to do something that I'm really passionate about, helping people, get a job, succeed in finding work, succeed at, not being, just because they're uninformed doesn't mean they're not great, could not be great employees. But there's not enough emphasis placed on the information that young people need to actually succeed in their first and second and third jobs.
And what would you say has been the key now that you, they say, well, you know better, you do better, right? So now it sounds like you're doing better with millennials. What would you say has been the key for your company in retaining them?
So I think a few things. One is always providing context. When I was started my career, I did things because I was told to. I didn't ask why. And, millennials have grown up understanding why they were doing things, always asking those things, and information has been given to them and available to them in a different kind of way. So always context first, always ask for input on your programs, because great ideas come from lots of places, and learning happens when you don't take someone's input, as long as you share it back, and have high expectations and say them out loud.
High expectations of the people who are working for you.
Anybody. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
How they're going to comport themselves, what kind of work they're going to do, what does achievement mean? High expectations, and then support to provide it.
And do you feel like millennials too, this is what I've heard, and it's funny, millennials I think is so interesting because there's the older millennials who want to make sure they're differentiating themselves from the younger millennials. So I don't know. I'm Gen X, so I don't know. What they tell me is how it is. And I'm like, okay. Because if I ever say, are you a millennial? They say, oh, I'm an older millennial. All right.
92% of millennials don't think they're millennials.
Think they're millennials. Okay. I don't think, all right. So I won't think people are crazy. I'll think they're the same. But do you find that, oh gosh, now I'm sounding like an old person. I forgot what I was going to say about millennials. All right. Moving on. What do you tell us about then the Boomerang Principle, which I know is the name of your latest book, and why it's good for companies to be open to this idea, since we're talking about retaining and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Boomerang Principle is the idea that companies and organizations that allow and encourage former employees to return as employees have a strategic advantage over those that don't. And so at Double Forte, we've been around for 16 years. We have rehired 12 people. We're a small company, 35 people. We have rehired 12 or 13 people once, and we've rehired 5 people twice. And the comes out of actually the work I was doing around my first book, when I was going around the country doing workshops and keynotes, and which I love to do, and I find really is hopefully helpful for the people who hear the stuff, but also just hearing what people are experiencing, in their companies. And every single one, Elayne, someone said, those millennials here, job hoppers, they leave to me. If they leave me, they're dead to me. Mm-hmm. And my reaction was like, no, don't say
that. Right.
Because, usually if you have that point of view, you also have the point of view, I don't want to train them because they're going to leave me and I'm going to waste my time. Mm-hmm. And for millennials and for everybody, this is not actually generational, but it showed up as a millennial thing. The less training you do, the faster people leave you. Mm-hmm. And particularly for this group that had very different educational styles than people like myself. I'm the last year of boomers, or yourself as a Gen Xer. Education and how you teach people has totally changed. So if you don't train people, they are not going to believe that you're invested in them, and they'll leave because they can, and they do. So people And if that's you, that's on you if you're not training people. If people leave because you didn't train them, that's on you. That's not on them because they know they can get other things. Then, it is hubris to imagine that a company can hold a person for their whole career.
Mm-hmm.
You think about people who are entering the workforce today, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, they are probably going to have 60-year careers, something that you and I did not contemplate.
Right.
To imagine that a 60-year career could be with one
person. Exactly.
I mean, that's ridiculous. And to imagine that in this moment in time where everything is changing so fast, like what we do, I started my company before Twitter. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
60% of our business now is on social media. So to imagine that there will be dramatic change in every career, in every industry, in every business, and that someone would be interested in staying with you for that whole time is total hubris. Instead, when you hire someone, I say, everyone who comes in my company, Elayne, I go, when they meet with me for the first time, I said, I know you're going to leave me. And I hope you come back. And they look at me like, I just got here. Why are you saying I'm going to leave? Because I know you are. When we hire people, we know they're going to leave us.
Especially if you're hiring great people, which obviously is something you want to do, right?
Mm-hmm. And when you do leave here, one, I hope you stay for a long time. But when you do leave here, I hope you plan on coming back here. Because that is the sign of a great company, where great people come back to you. They go out into the world, they achieve something else on their own career goals that you cannot accommodate, right? And then when you have moved, the company's moved forward and that person has moved forward, there's an opportunity. And why would you not bring someone back who fits is the perfect hire just because they left you the first time? As long as they left well, as long as you had a good experience with them, as long as, they can contribute, bring them back.
Right. And it might be that they're going out too and getting other experiences that you can then use within your company, or they can then use within your company.
Absolutely. Someone who returns to you is more valuable when they return to you than they were the last day they left you.
Mm-hmm.
Always. Because they went and learned something. Well, don't hire them if they didn't learn anything. Don't hire them back. Not just because you left doesn't mean you can come back, right? You got to earn that position. But, the people who come back, these people have learned something else. They understand your culture. They understand the value of what you bring to the party. And they also understand other things that you can use for the company's advantage. They are more valuable the second time around. So if you have this point of view, right, one, you are training people to be the best people they can be to achieve their goals in the company, knowing that they're going to leave. And if you're training people, they're leaving later. If you can hold on to people one extra year than they thought they were going to stay, because in general, people think they're going to have shorter stints today than they did 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They think 4 years is a long time. They think 5 years is a long time,
Right.
If you can keep them 1 year longer than they thought they were going to stay, which you can do by training in general, the over average would be, if you're training people, if you're aligning their work with what they want to do in the context of your business, every time you've prolonged somebody from leaving you by 1 year, you've saved yourself $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
Multiply that over time. It's a business decision, right? It's not just because, everybody's hunky-dory. It's a business decision to have this. And then when they leave you, they leave in a good way, you leave them, and you celebrate what they do after they've left you. One, they're going to be more loyal to you after they've left you, right? They're going to remember that you trained them. They're going to know that, oh gosh, I just met Elayne. You should talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
You should talk to Elayne, man. She'd be awesome for this job. I've just shortened my recruiting cycle. I can tell you our recruiting cycle after we started having this point of view and putting our alumni program together, shortened by half the number of days, right? So they think of your company as a partner or a client or an agency or a firm or a service provider. They come back to you as a consultant, or they come back to you as a full employee. Because really, loyalty is not about, these people who say they're dead to me. Well, that person was being paid. That is not actually a loyal act. Showing up is not a loyal act when you're getting paid. You're supposed to show up when you're getting paid.
Right.
A loyal act is when you do not expect something to happen for you, when you just do something because it occurs to you, oh, that would be a great match. When you're not expecting a quid pro quo, that is a loyal act. And if we all focus today on how do we inspire loyalty for someone's entire life, not just the time that we're paying them, this is what's going to create sustainable business over time.
And as a business owner, it just expands your network, as you mentioned, doing things like helping you cut your recruiting time. And, these people go on, they meet other people, they refer those people to you because they have that good relationship with you beyond just coming into the office and working with you every day.
Absolutely. Everybody who leaves you can hurt you or help you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody. And they will help you even if you don't ask them to.
Right. So, exactly. Whether you know it or not.
Whether you know it or not, you're going to know a lot more today than we did 20 years ago because of social media and Glassdoor and LinkedIn and all those kinds of things. We're going to know a lot more. But everybody who's out there can help you or hurt you if they've been with you. So why not do everything you can to help them help you? And that only works if you have high expectations for people's performance, right? If getting rid of people who aren't pulling their weight or aren't doing their job or doing things that are outside of the code of conduct, well, you have to do those things. Mm-hmm. But most people want to do a good job. Most people want to have, a good career. And today, most people think, I'm going to have 4 or 5 or 6 careers. I'm not that interested in doing this for the rest of my life. It's going to change.
Right. And people are much more open to that now.
Much more open to that. And millennials are much more open to returning to a company. They don't see it as, I think we had this idea, and it really was sort of baked into the American dream part of you work hard, a company takes care of you. Well, we all know that that's not true, right? We learned that several times, but really that starts changing in our culture in the early 1980s when publicly traded companies started taking basically streamlining and laying people off for performance, meaning street performance, not for profitability, right? And that move started in the early 1980s, and really you saw the culmination of that in 2008 with the total economic almost failure of our country. And then people know that they have to take care of their own careers. People know they have to drive them themselves. And really what we're talking about when we're mad someone left the company, is that they left before we wanted them to. Mm-hmm. Well, that's another, people know that they're not in control. I own my own company. I can't control if my clients get bought or not. I can't control if, other agencies merge together or don't. I can't control a lot of things. So I always tell my employees, and that's another part of the Millennial-Minded podcast, is how to have what would you do if you lost your job? What's your side hustle? What's your fallback plan? Because I do think in this gig economy, we're all going to need to have choices. Mm-hmm.
And do you encourage your employees to have, even if not encourage, are you okay with your employees having other things that they're doing outside of your company, as long as obviously it's not competitive or anything like that? But how do you feel about that?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. They don't all do it, but some do. Right. We have an actor who's, making money acting. We have people who are doing coaching for marathons and stuff like that. So I do encourage people to think about what is it can't be competitive to our business, but it could be something that we have one of our graphic designer people here. He has he has a side hustle business that is in the graphic area, but it's in a totally different artistic endeavor. Right. And he came to me, he said, Lee, is it okay if I do this? I'm like, of course.
And that's a good thing too.
Go do it.
Yeah, that relationship where they can come to you or whoever they need to and say, hey, this is something I want to do, as opposed to doing it secretly, because then they can get joy out of both things. Exactly.
And I think that's the piece where you have to be open conversation. So my expectation for him is that he does his job while, on time. Things don't slide because of his other gig, and the quality is great. And as long as those things are true, I really don't care. I hope that they're doing other things.
Right.
Because it also makes them more relevant in the workplace. right? They're learning other things on someone else's time. Awesome.
Right. Good for you. Exactly. I know that's right.
Great. Can you do that for us now?
Right. Exactly. Now, how do we talked about when employees come back and how you are okay with them leaving, but how do you ensure a quote unquote positive exit? So, yeah.
The positive exit, which I have a chapter dedicated to this, chapter 7, I think, in Boomerang Principle, is two things. One, it's all on the employee. It's on the employee to be Boomerang eligible, right? And so when you have decided to leave a company and go on to the next thing, it is up to you to be to qualify for coming back. And that is a few things. So one is usually people aren't walking you the same day, unless you're in sales and you're going to a competitor, then you should expect to get walked the same day. But, be prepared, right? Tie things up in a bow. So the day you're giving your notice, present your boss also with a memo. Here's everything I'm working on. Here are, and here's all the deadlines, and here's all the things you have to make sure don't fall through the cracks, right? Also, if people report to you, review those people's reviews and update them with your impressions on wherever they are, right? So that when the next person takes over for you, gets to the review, they have the benefit of your impressions since their last review, and they don't have to sort of make it all up on their own. That's the first thing. Tie things up in a bow. Second is keep showing up, keep coming to work, do your job, right? And 3 is figure, what you should absolutely make sure is write the list of people who you want to make sure you keep in touch with. Who are the people you have good relationships with in the company, and then go talk to them, right? And make sure you're on LinkedIn with them and go explain why you're leaving and wish them luck, and they'll wish you luck, and all those kinds of things. And so that it's a continuation, not an ending, right? Don't steal anything. Don't download company secrets. Don't don't put the sugar in the salt shaker. Don't do that stupid thing that you hear about all the time. Just don't do it, right? Just don't do it. Even if you don't like your boss, don't do it. Don't subscribe to million, magazines on their behalf. Just don't do these things. And they do. The reason I mention those is because they do happen.
That's crazy.
And just just take the high road, and that's your job. Your job is to take the high road, and your job is to make it easy for the people you're leaving behind.
That's right.
So when you do that, right, you have left a good taste. So what if you've gone from a good job to the dream job? No one's going to say no to that. Well, they might, but they're jealous. And then, give it a couple of months, but then keep in touch with people. And if you're out there in your new job and you see an opportunity for a former colleague or a former company, make it happen. It's not a lot of skin off your nose to make things happen. So that's what you have to do to be Boomerang eligible. I just on my Millennial-Minded podcast, my last episode, which was last Friday, was Duncan's last day.
I know, I heard that one.
Episode. And he had been here. He was an intern. Then we hired him, and then he took a job. Frankly, he's not really that qualified for, but it is the perfect job for him. It is. I'm so excited for him.
The job he's going to.
The job he's going to. Okay. He was doing a great job here. Oh my gosh, he was doing a great job.
He was there for 5 years or something like that?
5 years. It's a long time. He was here, he was here from 22 to 27 and a half, I guess, something like that. That's extremely long. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm so proud that he stayed here that long. The company, proud for the company. He's going to do the perfect job for him for now, right? And I was so thrilled for that. And if you have time to listen to the episode, I thought it was a good episode because it really embraced the whole idea of the Boomerang Principle was in the how do you tell your boss you're leaving and have it be a good thing, right?
Right, exactly. And I'll make sure I link to it for everybody listening.
Of course, I'm not happy he's gone, but of course I'm happy that he's going to a great place. He's left here for the perfect job for him right now. And he wanted to do more of the creative stuff that he was not going to be able to do in the job that he had. And we already had people in those positions. So he's going to go do something great in the outdoor space, meaning in the outdoor apparel space, which is what he cares about so much. It's perfect for him.
It's perfect.
Well, he'll come back.
He'll be back. Right.
He's going to come back. He's already sent us a lead. I mean, he's only been gone for 3 weeks. So, he'll be back. It's not that I would love it if everybody stayed, but there's no stasis, right? And it's people we're talking about. And, and particularly as a small company, which we are, and we're just going to stay that way. All I really care about, Elayne, is that when someone leaves Double Forte, that Double Forte stays on their resume, because that means that it was important to them.
Right.
And that they say, you know what, I learned a lot there. And I learned about how to be a good colleague. I learned how to do great, tactical things. I learned a lot about strategy. I learned how to be a good professional there. As long as they have that, if they keep it on their resume, I am okay with them leaving.
Now, what would you say that? Yes, exactly. Now, what would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
What it's taught me about how to be quiet. It's taught me about to go with my, not to be quiet and listen to other people. Number one. I think it's also taught me to not doubt myself. I know I'm going to screw up, and I just have to be okay with the fact that I'm going to screw up, because since I know I'm going to screw up, I'm really quick to fix things after something happens, and to be okay in that imperfection. I think there's a lot of expectation, particularly for women, to be perfect, for leaders to be perfect. It's an impossibility. And mostly it's taught me how to understand this job of leadership, which is not to tell everybody what to do, but to say, here's where we're going. That's where the future is. We're going over here, to chart a path that has that is not so prescriptive that it doesn't allow for people to do their own discovery, and also to understand that when people are doing what they love and what they're interested in, that's when greatness happens. And the more you can touch people during that time of their lives, the better it is.
So in closing, Lee, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
It'd be so hard. One person would be so hard. I have so many mentors, but I think it'd be my mother, frankly. My mom, my mom was a stay-at-home mom for the first part of her marriage. And then when I was in 7th grade, I remember her learning how to type on Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing on a typewriter, which we can't even find today. She went back to school. She was the first valedictorian at Simmons Graduate School for Business. And then she created a career where she didn't have to. Which ended up being about empowering people. And at the same time, she was very present for her kids. We're all 3 girls, and had high expectations for us, and then supported us in our decisions. Didn't try to tell us what to do, but really supported us in our decisions. And then also was very involved in philanthropy, helping people with an arm up, not a handout kind of stuff. And when I started my company, when she was sick, right? So that I could be with her. And she was still, until the cancer went to her brain, she was always giving me, I could always go to her and say, this is what I'm dealing with. What do you think? And she would tell me, even if, she would tell me that's stupidly, or that's good, or have you thought about this? Or I'm so proud of you. And, no matter if I was screwing up, she always said she was proud of me for trying and for trying to do better all the time. So I think she's the one who I would have to thank.
That's beautiful. And I'm sure it was wonderful for her just to be able to even give input on your business and what you were doing. Feeling like she was a part of the process.
I think so. She always did you do what I said?
Right. Did it work?
Did it work? It did. I knew it. Right. And she learned, I could just see it in a twinkle in her eye. She would never say, I knew that, but I knew. people that I knew that she knew, right?
So now, what are the ways that we can support you? Tell everyone. Of course, I'll have links to your website, but tell everyone so they can hear it, any social media or anything else you want us to check out.
Sure. Probably the best place to go for me is leecaraher.com, LeeCaraher.com. You can find my books, The Boomerang Principle and Millennial-Minded there. You can also find them at Amazon and IndieBound and all places you find great books. And I also have the speeches that I give. And if you want me to come do a workshop, you can find all that information there. I blog there as well. And on Instagram, I'm Lee Caraher, and Twitter, where I'm very active, is at Lee Caraher as well.
Excellent. Lee, thank you so much. This was such a joy. And I learned so much about millennials that I didn't know. And even too, as an entrepreneur, and as I continue to grow my business, just a different way of thinking about working with different people coming into your life, whether employee or contractor, and just, things flow in and out of relationships, but it doesn't have to be something quote unquote negative. You can have a positive exit for everybody.
That's the goal.
That is the goal.
Life is too short, man.
Right. Yeah. Right? It makes you much more stress-free.
The less friction we can have in our expectations and in reality, the better it is.
That's right. I was going to ask you for a parting piece of advice. Would you say that was it?
That would be it. We're looking for friction free. And when we focus on people instead of checking boxes is when we get to the least friction possible.
Mm-hmm. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lee. To find out more about her, to find out more about Double Forte, how to get in touch with her, and find out what they're up to, just go to supportissexy.com. Go to that search icon at the top and type in Lee, Lee. Her show notes page will pop up with links, the resources mentioned in this episode, and the ways to get in touch with her. Supportissexy.com and just search Lee. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. It wouldn't be the same without you, so I'm glad that you're here. Now, until we chat again, always remember, support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.